Hi, I'm Tammy, and welcome to my YouTube channel. It's been a while since I've actually posted anything. Well, pretty much. I just did one for an Indiegogo program that I've started, which is essentially to raise money to help families raising children with mental and emotional instabilities. That can range from autism, ADHD, PTSD, addiction, and I mean the magnitude is there. Anything considered special needs or developmental disabilities is a very important piece for me. I really feel like every single person on this planet is here for good reason, and it's disturbing to me to see the number of families that are being impacted by anxiety and depression. I mean, just to name a few, not to mention the more extreme situations, schizophrenia, addiction. If I haven't already mentioned that, it's huge. And again, this isn't really limited just to children. I work with adults as well. If you haven't seen any of my videos yet, I've just said this in the other one, the neurochemistry affects every system in the body. So to have a mental emotional instability, even if it is just simply anxiety or heightened sensitivity, hypersensitivity, also known as sensory processing disorder, depending where you fall on that spectrum, then these are important pieces. These are all indicators of a neurochemical imbalance, which brings me to the point of this video today, which is with regards to sensory processing disorder. It's not necessarily highly recognized as a disorder. I do know that there's some arenas that are considering it. I've seen actually some parents recently speak of their children having SPD. I also know that it's directly related. It's not uncommon to be in autism. So, but what I wanted to say on that note is that, in my opinion, most everyone is living with some degree of sensitivity to the planet, whether it be to light, sound, smell, touch. These things are all a part of our senses, and it's all directly linked to the autonomic nervous system. And when there's a neurochemical imbalance, the autonomic nervous system is going to be out of balance. So it doesn't have to be extreme. It could be very, very hard to detect, but it's there. And my suspicion is this is what causes a lot of aggravation that we might see in people. Or notice, and it may be even in ourselves, and we don't even recognize why. That's a really interesting thing. We don't know. We just all of a sudden find ourselves aggravated, and there's so many schools of thought, and getting people to reflect on, our emotions and how, whatever may have happened, whatever occurred, and so. We can take that any direction. It can go into blame. It can go into judgment. There can be a whole host of, like I said, directions that you can take it. But I'm going to ask you to stop and consider for just a moment that you might actually be reacting to, again, light, sound, touch, smell. This is the reason why I consider myself an olfactory therapist, because the sense of smell is really very important, and it can be either hypersensitive or impaired. And if it's impaired, it's an entirely different story. But what they found through all the studies that continue to go on to this day is that impaired sense of smell or hypersensitive smell isn't necessarily that most people's sense of smell doesn't vary very much. Our spectrum for being able to detect odors is fairly similar. We've just trained ourselves not to smell. We don't know. And we're also inundated with so many smells that we just kind of tune them out. And this isn't any disrespect to anyone who has hypersensitivity to smell. And by that, I know there's plenty of people that are living with a condition called chemical sensitivity, and they find themselves very affected by scents. And I mean, we see that. I mean, you can go in any city in the country. I can't speak about other countries, but at least in the United States, there's a lot of establishments that have posted signs that requesting that people do not wear scents into their establishment due to the sensitivities. So again, this is not a sign of disrespect to those who are experiencing that. I completely understand, totally understand what's going on with you. And I totally recognize the fact that you are exposed to a scent and then find yourself having a reaction to it. That doesn't necessarily mean that your sense of smell is stronger. What it means is that the neurochemistry is out of balance. Now, if you've watched other videos or if you've read anything about me, you know that I work with essential oils, and so some people will be like, I'm opposed to that, you know, scents give me headaches. I remember the very, very first trade show that I went to where I met Robert Tisserand, and somebody came up to me, and I was a newbie. This was like all new to me, and like, well, smells, perfumes, fragrance gives me headaches, and that was my first indicator that this might be a little bit of a challenge with people. And again, it can be, and if there are certain things that cause that reaction, then identifying that as a hypersensitivity would link us back to the sensory processing issues. Again, it may be not severe, could be very severe. But like I said, I feel like most of us are very hypersensitive to something. It doesn't necessarily mean all of those things that I've listed, but at least one thing. And I myself have sensitivity to sound, very much so. And believe it or not, wind is just really hard for me. Actually, I think touch is, depending on, and it can aggravate me. So these have been my experiences over my lifetime, and through the work that I've been doing with addiction and autism and anxiety and other health issues, autoimmune issues. I'm finding that the sensory processing is extremely important. And it's important in the sense that we do know the chemistry involved. Like I said, the autonomic nervous system, and it's generally regulated. It's regulated by primarily two neurotransmitters. That would be acetylcholine and norepinephrine. Epinephrine is also involved because this is our fight or flight. So the bottom line to the autonomic nervous system is it's an excitatory as well as an inhibitory. It is our instinctual reactions. And it's, like I said, it's primarily the acetylcholine as well as norepinephrine. Norepinephrine and epinephrine there's not a lot of difference chemically when you talk about the structure of them. It's just that epinephrine happens to have a methyl group, whereas norepinephrine does not. And that there changes the way they work within the body. So I mentioned a little while ago with regards to these the essential oils, I will not make any suggestions here on this video on how to deal with sensory processing disorder when it comes to oils, primarily because your issues or somebody that you know is specific to you, and I would need to have the whole picture. It's absolutely impossible to tell you what to do. I know there's a lot of ideas on calming, soothing essential oils. Even herbs for that matter. And the interesting thing for me is when we have hypersensitivity like this, what that essentially means is that the acetylcholine is it's not being deactivated by the body. This is where I get really excited, because when I get into it at this level and I'm looking at the biochemistry and the synthesis of chemicals within the body, our system is designed to activate and deactivate all the chemicals so that the body can maintain itself. We do it with histamine, which is related to the immune system. We do it with norepinephrine and epinephrine. We do it with acetylcholine. We do it with all of them. And this to me is an absolute miracle. And when we recognize that too much acetylcholine, because it's not being deactivated at the nerve endings, you know what it does? It inhibits the release of norepinephrine. So now you have the excitatory inhibitory malfunction. And so with too much acetylcholine at the nerve endings, guess what is not wise to ingest, unless you're actually modifying the genetic expression with essential oils. And that's key. That is absolutely key in this. You can support it nutritionally, but you're not going to get very far unless you're actually supporting the body to produce the proper enzymes that will deactivate the acetylcholine. You see, the genes have to communicate, and the reason why we have a decline in health is that we have genetic adaptations that are causing enzymatic defects, meaning we're not producing the proper chemistry, therefore we're producing toxins that burn our nerves, burn tissues, basically. Or we don't make the proper chemical conversions necessary for all of these different processes. So it's crucial to get to use very specific essential oils because they are modifying genetic expression. Now, if anybody wants to debate that with me, we already know that everything, even our own body, will alter genetic expression depending on stress levels, medications that we're taking, our lifestyle. This is the reason why we have so many genetic adaptations. Our own hormones actually will activate and inactivate cellular, genetic expression. So we know this for a fact. Every chemical that we consume is affecting our genetics. And so if you're taking medication, properly supporting your body, this is another reason why I won't make specific recommendations here. But if you're supporting the body with medications, adequate support with essential oils is paramount, because at that point now you can add the nutritional information to the body, and thereby being able to deactivate and slow the acetylcholine down. On that note, like I started to mention, things that you do not want to do until you are supporting the body is consume foods with choline, such as eggs. Here's a really good one. Chamomile tea. Chamomile tea is very high in choline, and the irony of that is that we drink chamomile tea to calm us down. But here I'm going to go back into the long-term effects. If you've been with me a while, you know I'm very big on long-term effects. So sticking with something for long-term is not wise, especially if you have a hypersensitivity, because what you're doing is you're adding fuel to the fire. You're putting more choline into the body, which is being converted to acetylcholine, and it's inhibiting the release of norepinephrine. And so what are you going to have? You're going to have lack of focus, or lack of, inability to concentrate, mental fog, agitation, hyperactivity. We know that, ADD, ADHD, right? Yeah, just feeling like you can't sit still. Again, some of us, I believe, are already dealing with that. We just don't recognize that all of a sudden we're feeling anxious and we don't understand why. Panic attacks is another really good example of sensory processing disorder. So these are very important. Now, so what can you do nutritionally? Well, I'll give you some ideas, and this is going to go probably over like a lead thinker, because there's so many ideas out here on low purine diets. But you see, purine is necessary by the body for producing nucleotides, which is involved with DNA and RNA repair. However, at the same time, a diet high in purine, which is typically in with meat, if you have a high purine diet, you can potentially end up with a highly acidic body, and a lot of uric acid in the body. And so that's the reason why we talk about eating a very alkaline diet, because the body isn't using purine properly. Now, why isn't it using purine properly? Well, there's going to be a lot of arguments out there to say that we're not meant to eat meat. And, I'm not going to go into that debate because there are other things that have purine in them, such as dried beans and raw cacao, chocolate, brewer's yeast, oatmeal. So there are other things that have purine that are not animal-based, which means that we can still be potentially producing uric acid and having a more acidic body. So you see, so what you'll do is you'll go out there and you'll see there's a lot of information on what to eat in order to reduce your purine levels. But to me, that's a problem, because we've already demonstrated that the body actually needs purine for DNA and RNA repair. And furthermore, it's used in the production of, it's used in the chemistry process that actually deactivates acetylcholine. And this is the reason why I say essential oils are essential, because the only way to modify, that I'm aware of, truly to modify genetic expression in a restorative way is going to be through the use of essential oils. Now, again, if you're taking medications, this isn't to say that you don't take the medications. It's just essential that you, and I use that word a lot, I'm very sorry, but it's important that you actually find out which ones are beneficial and that are not going to complicate matters, because those medications have a mechanism of action within the body. So if you're already dealing with, a highly acidic body, and you're, in high blood pressure or diabetes or arthritis, and you're taking medications, it's important to know that information in order to pair it with the proper essential oils to make certain that the purine gets used. So thereby you don't have to live with a limited diet. And even if you don't want to eat meat and you are a vegetarian or a vegan and you want to be able to consume more and support the body to produce the chemistry that will actually naturally begin to deactivate acetylcholine so that there's better use of norepinephrine. We can play with the chemistry all we want. We can try to stimulate acetylcholine. We can try to stimulate norepinephrine. This is very possible to do. But what you're doing is you're not giving the body a chance to actually do what it's designed to do, which makes your life much simpler when you are clear-headed and able to lead a life with purpose and joy. And that's really what this is all about, being comfortable in your own skin. It doesn't make any difference what the diagnosis is. It's more important about being comfortable in your own skin. You may not have a diagnosis. You may just find that you're easily aggravated or agitated during certain periods of time. It could be the sound of someone chewing. It could be, bothersome light. We already know that, with migraines, there's sensitivity to light. So even you may not get a high amount of migraines at all, but light still may be bothering you. This is where we fall into trouble, because there's a lot of overlap when it comes to different diagnoses, when in fact the hypersensitivity to these things is really your first introduction that the body is beginning to break down. And the body breaks down due to a misuse of nutrients. That's what this is about, and it's really helping your body fully utilize everything that you're consuming to the highest benefit. So that's what this is about. If you have any questions with regards to your specific case, please let me know. Email me at tammy.davis8@gmail.com. That's tammy.davis8@gmail.com. And if you're dealing with hypersensitivity to smell, we can talk. If you're dealing with impaired sense of smell, that's a really important thing to remember too, because an impaired sense of smell is indicative of a couple of things. If it's truly an impaired sense of smell, where you just don't smell, you've either injured yourself, which I have a friend that did when she was a baby, and she used to fondly refer to me as her olfactory tour guide because she truly can't smell. But if there hasn't been an injury to the olfactory bulb or the olfactory cortex, but it's impaired, they're finding that is actually an early indicator of potential Parkinson's which is interesting because my father now has Parkinson's, and for years, ever since I was a child, I remember him saying that he just couldn't smell. The other thing could potentially be a brain tumor. So if you through olfactory therapy, through a few sessions, you might actually be able to determine whether or not it's truly impaired, where you want to go get it checked, or if it's just, in fact, a lack of use, which, mind you, it's important to use that sense. On the other hand, if you're hypersensitive, well, there's things that we can talk about on with that regard, and how to be able to implement, because that would be a question I would have, is how do I do this? How do I deactivate acetylcholine if I'm hypersensitive to smell? And I will leave it on that note. So let me know if you have any questions. It's great spending time with you. Until then, have an absolutely beautiful evening. Thanks now.